You don't need more motivation. You don't need another dopamine hit. What you need is to stop lying to yourself. You scroll through reels about discipline. You save quotes about waking up at 5 a.m. You get this brief high, a flicker of hope. This time, I'll change. But 3 days later, you're back where you started. Back to snoozing the alarm. Back to the guilt. Back to that whisper in your mind. What's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you. But everything's wrong with what you've been told. Motivation is a spark. Discipline is a tool. But neither will save you if the fire inside is dead. Because here's the truth. You don't fail because you're lazy. You fail because you're hurting. No one teaches you this. They say, push harder. They say, man up. They say, don't make excuses. But tell me, how do you fight when your body is numb? How do you move when your soul is heavy? You're not battling procrastination. You're battling invisible wounds, abandonment, shame, the need to be perfect, the fear of being seen. This isn't a battle of willpower. It's a war of wounds. Why motivation always betrays you. Let's be honest. How many times have you waited to feel like it before starting? How many times have you said, I'll do it when I'm ready? But that day never really came, did it? Because motivation is a fickle lover. It shows up when the mood is right, when the music hits just right, when everything feels perfect, and then it leaves you. The moment reality starts to get real, sleepy, boring, pressure, loneliness. You built your dreams on sand, on the foundation of feelings, something that constantly shifts, constantly changes. The truth is, emotions can't be trusted. You can't control when you feel inspired. You can't rely on something you can't command. And that's where most people fall. They think successful people just have more motivation. But the truth is, they act even when they don't feel like it. Do you know what all disciplined people have in common? They don't care how they feel. They care what they do. You're not lazy. You've just trained yourself to only act when it feels easy. This conditioning starts early. We were taught, if you're good, you'll get a treat. If you do well, you'll get a reward. We learn to wait for pleasure, but we were never taught how to sit with discomfort. You weren't trained to persist. You were trained to escape discomfort. So now, the moment you face anything hard, studying, working out, creating, your brain retreats. Not because you're incapable, but because you never learned to sit with the feeling of not wanting to. You don't need more motivation. You need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. What you really need is self-command. Not control over your environment, but control over your response to it. You don't need excitement. You just need presence. You don't need everything to feel right. You need to show up, even when everything inside you is screaming to stop. Discipline isn't self-punishment. It's self-respect. Somewhere along the way, You confused discipline with punishment. You thought showing up meant beating yourself into submission. You thought getting things done meant killing your joy. You believed that to become better, you had to suffer. But that's not discipline. That's self-hate dressed up as self-help. Discipline isn't a whip. It's not no pain, no gain. It's not self-abuse with a productivity label. True discipline is quiet, soft, but unshakably consistent. It's waking up, not to punish yourself, but because your future self deserves better. It's choosing discomfort now, because it frees you later. You keep breaking promises to yourself, and that's why it hurts. Every time you say, "I'll start tomorrow," "I'll just rest a little longer," "I'll catch up next week," you feel a sting inside, not because you're lazy, but because your subconscious knows you're lying. And the more you lie to yourself, the less you trust yourself. And the less you trust yourself, the more you spiral. You build shame, then numb it with distractions. And that shame becomes a cage, one you don't even realize you're sitting in anymore. Discipline isn't rigid, it's sacred. It's not about doing everything all the time. It's about doing what matters, no matter what. It's about choosing yourself in moments when it's easier not to. It's about saying, "I don't want to do this, but I'll do it anyway, because I said I would, and I matter enough to follow through." That's not ego, that's integrity. That's love, real, uncomfortable, grown-up love for your own life. No one sees the moment you get out of bed, when no one's watching, no applause, no reward, no external validation, just you and the choice. That's where real discipline lives, not in grand gestures, but in quiet repetitions, in the boring, the ordinary, the moments that feel like they don't matter, but they do. They're everything. The myth of the big breakthrough. We've been sold this lie. That change comes from one big decision, one final moment of clarity. One, "I've had enough" scream into the night. But change isn't a movie scene. It's not dramatic. Real change is microscopic. It's choosing the workout instead of the scroll. It's writing one paragraph instead of none. It's going to bed 30 minutes earlier, again and again and again. Your brain isn't the enemy, it's just wired for safety. You procrastinate not because you're broken, but because your brain is trying to protect you. It associates discomfort with danger, and when you try to do something hard or unfamiliar, it throws up alarms. Too much, too scary. Let's do it later. But here's the secret. You can rewire that. You don't have to fight your brain. You just have to train it by showing up, even in micro doses. The power of ritual over willpower. Willpower is a depleting resource, but ritual is renewable. The more you do it, the more it does you, the more it shapes your identity. And identity is the strongest motivator in the world. You don't do things because you're motivated. You do them because that's who you are. So start building that identity today, one small ritual, at the same time, in the same place, with intention, not to impress, not to achieve, but to honor yourself. The shame loop is what's actually destroying you. You're not lazy, you're not broken, you're stuck in shame. And shame is a master manipulator. It whispers, "You failed yesterday, so why try today? You've never followed through before. Why bother now?" It turns every misstep into identity. You didn't just skip the workout, you are undisciplined. You didn't just procrastinate, you are weak. And slowly, without noticing, you stop trying altogether. Because trying means failing again, and you're tired of being disappointed in yourself. Shame doesn't build discipline, it buries it. Here's the raw truth. You cannot hate yourself into discipline. You cannot guilt trip yourself into greatness. Every time you try to fix yourself with shame, you reinforce the very identity you're trying to escape. And that's the trap. You think you're being tough, but really, you're reinforcing the belief, "I'm not enough unless I perform." And that belief is poison, because the moment you slip up, which you will, because you're human, it all collapses. The way out. Self-compassion is not weakness, it's fuel. What if, instead of punishing yourself, you comforted yourself? Not in the indulgent way, but in the honest, responsible way. You tell yourself, "I messed up today, but that doesn't erase who I'm becoming. I broke the streak, but I'm still someone who shows up." This isn't softness, it's strength. It takes courage to forgive yourself and still move forward. Because self-compassion is not letting yourself off the hook. It's giving yourself a hook to hold on to when everything slips. Discipline without compassion becomes cruelty. Compassion without discipline becomes chaos. You need both. And most people never realize that's the secret. Stop waiting to feel ready. Here's the most dangerous belief you were ever taught. I need to feel ready. But readiness is a mirage. It's always on the next hill. One more podcast, one more sunrise, one more Monday. And just like that, your life becomes a waiting room. You sit there, watching your own potential walk past the window, again and again. Your feelings are not the truth. Here's the hard truth. Your feelings, they lie. They say, "This task is too much. You're not capable. You're too tired, too overwhelmed, too behind." But the moment you start, even one small step, those feelings change. They weren't facts. They were just the resistance dressed up as logic. And the longer you wait for motivation, the more power you give to fear. Action doesn't follow motivation. Motivation follows action. That's the paradox. You don't act because you feel like it. You feel like it because you act. That first 5 minutes, that's where the shift happens. When you move, your brain starts building momentum. The fog lifts, the excuses quiet down, not because they disappeared, but because you stopped listening. Start before you're ready, especially when you're not. Some of the most life-changing actions you'll ever take will come when you feel the least prepared. You won't feel confident. You won't feel certain. You won't feel motivated, but you'll feel something deeper, a quiet defiance, a refusal to wait any longer. And that is the beginning of discipline. Not the loud kind that posts gym selfies, but the soft, fierce kind that shows up when no one claps, that whispers, "Let's begin anyway." You become what you repeatedly do. Most people live in a loop. They try to act differently, but deep down, they still see themselves the same way. A lazy person trying to be productive. A quitter trying to stay consistent. An imposter trying to appear disciplined. And guess what? Eventually, your self-image always wins. Identity is the root. Discipline is the fruit. Here's what no one told you. True, sustainable discipline doesn't come from willpower. It comes from identity. You don't try to act like a disciplined person. You become one. Through repetition, through evidence, through showing up, even when it's messy. And every time you follow through, even in the smallest way, you're voting for the future version of yourself. Each action says, "This is who I am now." Not someday, now. Let it be small. Let it be consistent. Let it be you. You don't need 100-day challenges. You don't need aesthetic planners. You don't need to overhaul your entire life. You need to show up. Today, tomorrow, the day after that. Not because it's glamorous, not because it's exciting, but because it's you, and you're no longer negotiating with yourself. Discipline, real discipline, isn't loud. It's locked in. It's brushing your teeth without question. It's showing up for your writing, your workout, your healing. Not because someone's watching, but because you are. That's what changes everything. The mirror principle of discipline. Look in the mirror. What if the goal isn't to fix yourself anymore, but to build a version of you that you respect? What if the pain of inconsistency wasn't laziness, but the ache of not living in alignment with who you really are? What if your highest self has been watching this entire time, waiting for you to stop performing and start becoming? You've been told discipline is cold, rigid, strict, that it's about punishing yourself into being better. But that's not true. Real discipline is love in action. It's choosing to show up for your future self. It's saying, "I care about you too much to keep doing this. I want better for you, not someday, but today, because you deserve to trust yourself again." You're tired of breaking promises to yourself, of making plans at midnight and breaking them by morning. You're tired of performing productivity for others while quietly drowning in self-doubt when no one's looking. You crave something deeper, not just routines, not just goals, but self-respect, alignment, integrity. What works is simple, but not easy. You don't need more hacks. You don't need another dopamine detox. You don't need the perfect morning routine. You need to make a quiet, inner decision that you are done negotiating with mediocrity, that you are no longer outsourcing your life to feelings, that from now on you will act in alignment with the version of yourself you've always wanted to become. Even if no one sees you, you'll know. No applause, no perfection, no grand announcement. Just quiet, brutal consistency. You'll wake up, and instead of asking, "How do I feel?" you'll ask, "What would the disciplined me do right now?" And then you'll do it. That's what changes everything. Final whisper: don't wait to feel different. Act differently. Discipline isn't something you need to get. It's something you build by doing hard things when no one's clapping and becoming someone you no longer need to escape from. So don't wait. Not for motivation, not for clarity, not for permission. Begin now, before you feel ready, because you won't become disciplined until you act like someone who already is. If this video helped you break through something inside, share it, like it, subscribe to MIRoR, not for the algorithm, but for you, to remind yourself that you are worth showing up for. Again and again and again, the mirror never lies, and today, it reflects someone who's finally ready to become.